Greetings, fellow Thulians. The last time I promised you that I would show how random encounter works in Reconquest. And I showed you that he encountered someone. Normally you have to roll for on one of these tables, and of course he was in a hill hex and it was not night time, so we don't use this black encounter list, we use this one. And I cheated a little bit and pretended that we rolled for human encounter. And in Reconquest there are two types of human encounters that you can have in the wild. When the player characters encounter humans, they encounter either bandits or another adventure party from Narvik. Bandits will by default be hostile, but the adventurers behave normally. See humanoid encounters. And if you use the expert rules that will be released at some point, an adventure party might actually be a member of a faction called the Adventurers Guild. And of course bandits might be part of some bandit faction as well. That is of course up to the game master. Now I told you that Thistle Greenbottle was pretty sneaky because halflings are sneaky by nature, but I happen to know that the group he encounters has a thief guide who is equally sneaky. So we have to test their dexterity to see if their sneaking was successful. First of all, we start with Thistle. Oh no, it's a critical failure. And this doesn't really matter a lot here, but I'll talk about it later on. And the thief, oh no, another critical failure. And this means simply that if they cast a 1 on the die, they surprise each other. First for Thistle and then for the party. So none of them are surprised. And what this means is that we can check here. One side surprises the other. Nope. No one surprises the other. Yes. So the encounter occurs at a distance of 3d6 times 20 feet. And of course the encounter distance is adjusted by wind, fog, rain, and also terrain types, and of course lighting. That would be if you're traveling during the night, your vision is impaired by that, unless you have night vision of course. And I threw a total of 5, so at 100 feet they encounter each other. And he was in a hill hex, so in effect they kept walking until they were 75 feet from each other. And then they spot each other. And here is a little piece about what to do with surprise. When you successfully surprise a group, you gain the option to decide whether to engage or avoid the encountered group. This grants you several tactical choices. You can, for example, move into a better position, or hide and set up an ambush, or evade the encounter entirely. Depending on the encounter distance, it also allows you the opportunity to freely attack the enemy for 1 round by surprise, typically, as the encounter occurs at a distance of 10 feet, only with a missile weapon attack, before closing the gap for melee combat. The first thing you do when you have an encounter is to actually check for morale, to see how the NPCs are going to behave. Thistle is outnumbered by 5 to 1, so his morale test is adjusted by +5. Meaning he has to test his willpower to see if he becomes afraid when he sees a group of 5 individuals. Thistle's willpower is 14, so he succeeded. He doesn't become afraid. And of course, when you encounter NPCs, this will decide how they are going to behave. So if they are afraid, they will probably try to run away. If they're not afraid, they will engage you, either in combat or for communication. The adventure party is made up of 5 individuals, and if you are 5 or more, if you outnumber the group you encounter with 5 or more, you adjust your morale test by the die, that is, with a -10. So they are very unlikely to become afraid when they encounter one single little halfling. Thistle is a player character, so even if he was afraid, the player could have of course decided what he would do, and the afraid condition would only have modified his die rolls a little bit. When you encounter humanoid creatures, you will see how they relate to each other. You have a halfling here, and they typically are not friendly but indifferent to humans. So they're not hostile, they're not going to attack you by default, they're not affectionate, they're not suspicious, and so forth. So what this means is that he can communicate with the creatures he encountered because they are humans and they are indifferent to him. So thankfully for Thistle, this party is pretty much indifferent to him, and they have no hostile intentions, and he can, instead of fighting them, he can communicate with them. I may add that this die roll can also be adjusted by the fright mod of the creature. Some creatures are more scary than others, but in case of humans and elves and dwarfs and halflings, their fright mod is just +0, so it doesn't really affect the die roll. In this case, neither group is afraid of the other, and they simply meet up and talk. Maybe they share some news and probably head off in different directions afterwards. If he wanted to influence their disposition towards him, he could have tried to use his charisma to do that. But he wasn't really interested in that, so he just lets the indifferent disposition remain, and he walks on. When you encounter animals, they will be either shy, peaceful or aggressive, and the result of the morale test will greatly influence how they behave in relation to you. A shy animal will try to evade their player party regardless of whether they become afraid or not. If unable to flee, they will fight to escape. Peaceful animals will try to evade the player party if they become afraid, and if not, they will freeze, trying to avoid confrontation or simply ignore the player characters. They will fight back if attacked, but will automatically flee or fight to escape if they become seriously injured. Aggressive animals, on the other hand, will try to evade the player party if they become afraid. Otherwise, they will attack and fight relentlessly. They will continue fighting until they are either killed or become afraid. So the behavior of the animal is very important in this context. And the behavior of each animal is listed in the creature section and also in the encounter tables themselves. So for example here in the hill encounters during the night, you see the behavior listed for all the creatures. Now this is a handy way to let the dice decide how creatures will behave when they are encountered. And I may add that the H here is for humanoid creatures, and they have a different type of reaction than animals do. And of course Ettins have no fear and are always aggressive. Trolls, that would be undead creatures, are never afraid and will always be aggressive. So there are no specific rules for that other than stating this fact. An NPC group that fails their morale test will try to evade, and there are rules for evasion here if you try to catch up with them when they flee. And of course a player party can decide to evade as well if they want to for some reason, even though they don't necessarily become afraid. You can of course also use tracking dogs if you want to avoid being surprised by others. If you really want to encounter someone, you can also increase your chance for an encounter by using tracking. That is, you look for tracks, you stop to listen, and you follow up on different hints and tracks that you find, and that will increase your chance for an encounter.